one-size-fits-all ratings are going to provide a lot of information you couldn't get from just coverage of the game. I just think there's an argument to be made they're obsolete.
I think that sort of brings us down a rabbit hole of being an informed parent, and the same argument is then made for rating systems when it comes to movies. And we could say that lots of parents don't have the time always to be the most informed about the content that their children want to play. I like to think and hope that most parents would be, and they wouldn't solely rely on a rating system. But according to our government and other governments, that's not the case. Pulling up a comment from the community, Muna says, I think it's a good idea since there are a lot more women and girls playing video games. That harkens back a little bit to a lot of the arguments that were happening with Gamergate and being a bit more inclusive. Jesse, how are you seeing on Twitter, if at all, Gamergaters responding to this?
I checked in briefly on sort of the subreddit where they congregate. I haven't seen much of a reaction to this, to be honest. I could imagine a lot of them not liking it because there is this thread in their narrative about censorship, and they really do see people like Sarkeesian as potential censors, which I disagree with completely. But, in a certain sense, I share a little bit of their apprehension at rating systems. I just don't buy the idea that it's going to lead to any sort of censorship.
David, do you think that there is enough sexism in video games to warrant, at the very least, having this conversation about placing a stamp on the on the games?
To warrant a conversation, absolutely. I think the question of how much sexism you need to actually have the stamp is much more complicated. But if we've learned something from Gamergate, which is a big if for many involved, it's that we at least need to have a conversation about what constitutes sort of systemic sexism and how we move from a large number of sort of anecdotal examples of tropes into sort of an actual framework to discuss the events that take place in games. And so I think we sort of reached a point where at least discussing like how we handle that information is absolutely necessary.
Andrew, do you think this this conversation that we're even having, this implementation, this grant that they're getting, is in reaction possibly to the Gamergate conversation that I guess you could say went viral?
Oh, I don't think it's in reaction to Gamergate. I think it's in reaction to the broader exposure of gender issues, inclusivity, sexism, and things like that we've been having over the past couple of years. A couple of years at E3, you would have looked at the slate of games that were out, and people said, a bunch of shooters, they're all brown and gray and boring. Last year and even the year before, the conversation still includes that, but it also includes, where are the women at? How come there are no women in Assassin's Creed? Because they're hard to animate, apparently. So the fact that we're having the discussion is proof that we're cognizant of it, and we're also actually seeing some publishers, some developers glom onto these issues and start to change their games accordingly, or at least evolve them. I don't want to say change, because that does scare a lot of people. Say, oh, my games are going to change, you're going to take them away, they're not going to be what they used to be. Well, no. Call of Duty just added female characters to the multiplayer. Wow. That's it. Everything else is still there. It's okay.
It's horrifying.
The world didn't explode. I mean, it's kind of amazing that it took a game called Modern Warfare so damn long to put women on the front lines. It's like, you are aware that women do fight in wars today, right? So
I want to pull up a comment right now from the community. This is from Tabitha, who says, they don't need to be rated officially for sexism, but I think that reviewers should be able to discuss whether the game is sexism. I think they meant to say is sexist. But yes.
Presumably.
Sorry, Tabitha, I threw you under the bus and read what you accidentally wrote. I read your typo and made fun of you. I apologize. Jesse, but people are having these conversations. Does the conversation need to go even further to the point of rating them? I think you said no before, but what if those conversations are only in the blogosphere? They're only via Twitter amongst hardcore gamers. They're not really happening amongst those who are just sort of recreational or rarely gamers. I played video games a fair amount when I was in high school, but I was definitely not hardcore or involved in any sort of conversations about the industry. I would just sort of show up at a friend's house. They were playing it. I would play.
Right. Ricky, first of all, you'll always be hardcore to me. Don't worry. But, Maybe this is just sort of post-Gamergate exhaustion, but there's a million conversations happening of every sort. There are websites that deal with these issues. That's great. There are websites that don't deal with these issues. That's great. I think the idea that we need it's hard to say if we need more discussion of it. I think one thing Gamergate has shown is we're having like a really vibrant, interesting cultural discussion about video games. And it's weird to me that any gamer would be unhappy that we're having a loud conversation about gaming as mainstream culture. So I'm sure there's places here and there where we could be paying more attention to these issues, but I think it's an exciting time to be following this world.
Quick comment from the community. Doug B says, do any of your panelists have daughters? Doesn't sound like it. I don't have a daughter. Do any of my panelists here have daughters? I don't think so.
Not that I know of.
But at the same time, I don't really know why that's a question of us. So we're all essentially agreeing that conversations about sexism in video games should be had. We're just debating what a official rating for sexism would look like. And we're not necessarily saying that it's wrong or completely inappropriate. We're just asking how that would work. I don't think anyone here is saying, no, this shouldn't happen, right? Is anyone saying that?
I played a video game once where you have a daughter, so I think I pretty much know what it's like anyway.
David, Andrew, none of us are actually saying this, right?
Correct. None of us are saying that.
Yeah, so Doug B, it sounds like you have a daughter, and that is fantastic. I'm sure you're a great father, and we applaud you for caring about whether or not there is sexism in the video games that she plays. Thank you for chiming in. Andrew, David, and Jesse, thank you for chiming in as well, for having this conversation with me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, I'm sure I'll see you on Twitter when the Gamergaters attack us once again.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's always fun.
Stick around, guys. We got a lot more conversations coming up here at HuffPost Live.